The IT Rules 2021, the latest avatar introduced in Feb of last year, has had a difficult 15 months to say the least. Criticisms from civil society, legal challenges abound. It's not been easy. And while the government is undeterred, it's not about to get any easier with the proposed amendments. The flip-flops certainly didn't help. On June 1st, Ministry of Electronics and IT, or MeitY, released the draft amendments for public comments on June 1st, and just as stakeholders began to brood over it, just a few hours later on June 2nd, MeitY withdrew it. Then late last night, MeitY released the draft amendments once again for public comments with absolutely no change. The same draft has been reproduced. But there was this one difference, a 4-page press note accompanying the draft amendments. In this press note, the government assured that the amendments will provide additional avenues for grievance redressal. It further says that the changes will ensure protection of constitutional rights. It also assures that it will not hurt startups in any way. So, what are these amendments? Well, there are 6 of them. We'll save the best for last. Here's the first one. Earlier, there was no mention of compliance with constitutional rights. Now the provision requires intermediaries to respect constitutional rights of its users. Number 2, intermediaries were earlier required to merely inform users about the rules and regulations. The draft changes now require intermediaries to not merely inform, but also asks intermediaries to ensure compliance with the rules. Amendment number 3, in fact, builds on that. The earlier version required intermediaries to not host content that is defamatory, obscene, porn, insulting, causes harassment, hurts national security. There's a long list of what is barred under Rule 31B, but you get the drift. Now, intermediaries are being tasked with causing users to not post barred content. Now, the government feels this will ensure more accountability from intermediaries and will also ensure greater compliance both in terms of letter and spirit with the IT rules. Now, amendment number 4. Earlier avatar needed intermediaries to acknowledge complaints within 24 hours. As per the draft, intermediaries will now be in fact required to acknowledge complaints and take down requests within 24 hours. Additionally, the amendments will now require intermediaries to act on these complaints and take down requests within 72 hours. Now, amendment number 5 introduces an entirely new concept. The draft will now ask intermediaries to develop safeguards to avoid misuse of complaints. The government has allowed this provision to let intermediaries deal with inappropriate, inauthentic or trivial complaints. Which brings us to amendment number 6 and perhaps the most significant one. Draft rules propose the creation of a grievance appellate committee. The government will appoint a chairperson and members. As per the draft, order of grievance officers of intermediaries can then be challenged before the Grievance Appellate Committee or the GAC. The GAC will decide the issue within 30 days and the intermediaries shall be bound by it. Now, the government says currently there is no credible self-regulatory mechanism. But many of these provisions have raised a few concerns. For one, some argue that the intermediaries being asked to check users from posting barred content will be tantamount to allowing private sector actors to police public conversations. There is also this apprehension that one could witness mindless policing to prevent these intermediaries falling foul of the rules. And while the rules empower intermediaries to deal with trivial complaints, there are no guardrails or guidelines on how this power is to be exercised. But more importantly, it has been red flagged that the GAC will have members appointed by the government, thereby allowing government implicit control over taking down content. There is also no mention of minimum qualification for grievance committee members. There is also no mention of allowing a hearing to content creators before issuing takedown orders. All of this while not forgetting that intermediaries do not merely mean social media companies, but also include news portals as well as OTT platforms. Let's also not forget that the IT rules have seen a whole slew of challenges across various high courts. Some high courts, in fact, have also stayed parts of the rules. So even as the government contemplates amendments to the existing rules, an entire batch of cases challenging the rules themselves would mean that the courts very well may have the final word.